So, when a congressional committee started releasing photos from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, a lot of people were hoping for some real transparency, some justice. But what we got instead was a full blown political firestorm. Today, we're going to break down how this search for truth got so completely tangled up in partisan politics. Right off the bat, this release has just ignited this fierce debate. You've got accusations flying everywhere that this isn't really about the victims at all, but about scoring political points. So, which is it? Is this a genuine effort to find the truth, or is it just being used as a political weapon? Let's just dive in and look at what actually went down. Okay, so at the very center of all this is a congressional oversight committee. Their whole job is basically government accountability, and they're the ones releasing these materials from the investigation. But it's how they're doing it that's causing all the controversy. They're dropping things in these carefully selected batches, some photos are altered, and it's created this huge stir, raising some really big questions about what their motives actually are. And that brings us right to the first major argument you're hearing from critics, that this entire release isn't about justice at all. Nope. It's a calculated, targeted political attack. Over on CNN, political commentator Scott Jennings, he really laid this out pretty clearly. His take is that this whole thing has been deliberately framed to create a link in everyone's mind between Donald Trump and this entire awful scandal. He's saying they're trying to shift the focus away from Epstein himself. According to Jennings, there's like a three-step playbook going on here. First, you cherry-pick a few very specific photos from a much larger collection. Second, you digitally alter them, blur out some faces, which of course is going to make people suspicious. And then third, you release those images completely out of context, which lets everyone just fill in the blanks with their own worst assumptions. And here's the real kicker. The one photo that's at the center of this whole firestorm, it's been public for years. It was from an event with adult models, and one of them had even described Trump's behavior that day as gentlemanly. So that known context seems to fly right in the face of this new, much more sinister story that's being pushed. But is the focus really that narrow? I mean, is it all just about one person? Let's flip to the counter-argument because it really builds a very different case for what might be happening here. So during that same debate, the host, Caitlin Collins, she pushed back on this idea of a narrow focus. She made the point that if you actually look at everything that was released, it's way, way broader than just one political figure. And this, right here, illustrates her point perfectly. The documents and photos also mention several other really high-profile people. You've got former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, the businessman Richard Branson, and even political strategist Steve Bannon. The names really do cross all kinds of political and industry lines. Jennings, though, he wasn't buying it. He came right back and said that including those other famous names is basically a smokescreen. In his words, their connections were already known, making them roadkill. He argued the real strategy is to stick Trump right in the middle of that group to create guilt by association. But the debate wasn't just about who was being targeted. There was another commentator on the panel who questioned the entire strategy of the release, saying it was just a serious mistake. That was Van Jones. He argued that by, as he put it, dribbling out little party pictures, the committee was actually trivializing the horrific reality of Epstein's crimes. He felt that this whole approach just distracts from how serious this is and really undermines the search for real justice. Now, this is what's so interesting. You've got two very different critiques here. On one side, you have Scott Jennings, who sees this as a deliberate, malicious political smear. But on the other side, you've got Van Jones, who sees it more as a tactical error, a clumsy approach that, in the end, just does a huge disservice to the victims. And this brings the whole conflict right back to that fundamental question of motive and transparency. Is this whole process really about uncovering the truth, or is it about winning a political fight? So, what was the official reason for altering those photos in the first place? Well, the committee's defenders, they point to a Department of Justice memo, and it basically says it's really hard to tell exactly how old people are in old photographs, suggesting the blurring was just a precaution, to protect any potential minors. And yet here is probably the most startling number in this whole entire mess. According to a CNN.com article that went through all the released images, this is the number of those photos that actually show any kind of misconduct. 0. So I think the most crucial thing to take away from all this is, despite all the controversy and the speculation and the political fighting, the images themselves, the ones that were released, they contained no new evidence of any illegal activity. And, really importantly, no photos that are believed to show underage girls. And all of this leaves us with one final, kind of lingering question. When a search for justice gets this tangled up in political theater, and the whole focus shifts to smearing your opponents or just scoring points, who's left to speak for the actual victims at the heart of it all?